Daniel has 3 syllables, each of which has a meaning in Hebrew. The word Dan means judge, the middle E stands for my, and the L stands for God. So Daniel's name translates as God my judge, or God is my judge. Having a name to live up to is a wonderful thing. Daniel exceeded his expectations in a spectacular way. He lived a life that screamed, God is my judge, not man. God is my judge, not any Babylonian or Persian king. I will have to account to God for how I live my life, not to Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, or Darius. God is my ultimate judge. In other words, God was at the center of his life. It was founded on God, and his perspective on the world was infused with God. This is evident in how he ate, how he interpreted dreams, how he wrote his book, and how he prayed. Daniel 6, 1-10. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, 2 with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them, so that the king might not suffer loss. 3. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. 4. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. 5. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." 6. So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." 7. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. 8. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. 9. So King Darius put the decree in writing. 10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. God is my judge. The way he ate. Remember that Daniel was among the captives taken to Babylon when Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem. He and others were chosen to be trained for service in the royal palace and fed the king's finest food and wine. Daniel, on the other hand, saw his food as a divine issue. Everything was a God thing for him. So Daniel 1:8 says, "But Daniel proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." Daniel looked to God, not the king, to decide his case. The end result, according to 1:17, was that God gave him learning and skill in all letters and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Daniel 1:7-17. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. 7. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. 8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. 9. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. 10. But the official told Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. 11. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, 12. Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. 13. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. 14. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. 15. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. 16. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. 17. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. The way he interpreted dreams. The same God-centered way of life shines through in Daniel's interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dreams and his son Belshazzar's vision. In Daniel 2:28, for example, he gives all credit to God. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you are lying in bed are these. And he accuses the world's most powerful rulers of arrogance and treason against God. For example, to Belshazzar in Daniel 5:23. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Every interpretation Daniel provides places God at the center, and great kings like Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar or Gorbachev fade into history like a cloud. Daniel 2:39. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. The way he prayed. Daniel's prayer life, however, is one of the most amazing examples of him living up to his name. God is my judge means what God thinks and does matters more than what anyone else thinks or does in the world. That meant a life of daring, defiant, and disciplined prayer for Daniel. If what God thinks is most important, then you should consult him first. If what God does is most important, you should request that he act first. To put it another way, you live your life through prayer. Don't forget that Daniel was a powerful political figure. In Daniel 2:48, Nebuchadnezzar appointed Daniel as ruler over the entire province of Babylon. In our text, Darius appoints Daniel as one of 3 presidents over the empire's 120 satraps or governors. Daniel 6:2. With 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel, the satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Sometimes we slip into thinking that prayer is the way monks spend their time. It's something for pastors or professional religious people, but it's not for activists or men of affairs or people with power and influence. That is a very wrong way to think about prayer and about your life as a busy person. Daniel was more immersed in secular life than most of us, and he lived his life through prayer, daring, defiant, disciplined prayer. because God was his judge. What God thought and did was the most important, so Daniel lived his life by consulting God and asking God to intervene. The text is an incredible testament to Daniel's daring, defiant, and disciplined prayer life. It makes me long to be courageous in prayer. It inspires me to be daring in prayer, and, if necessary, defiant in prayer against earthly powers, as well as disciplined in prayer. I don't want to be a spiritual jellyfish floating on the sea of emotionalism, praying here and there as the waves of emotion rise and fall. Daniel 9, 1-6. In the first year of Darius son of Xerxes, a Mede by descent, who was made ruler over the Babylonian kingdom, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood from the scriptures, according to the word of the Lord given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolation of Jerusalem would last 70 years. 3. So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition, in fasting and in sackcloth and ashes. 4. I prayed to the Lord my God and confessed, Lord, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. 5. We have sinned and done wrong. We have been wicked and have rebelled. We have turned away from your commands and laws. 6. We have not listened to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings, our princes, and our ancestors, and to all the people of the land. Famously and firmly dependent on God. Take a look at Daniel's incredible reaction to Darius's decree against prayer. Let's take a look at the situation. Verse 3. An excellent spirit was in him, and he excelled above the others, and the king planned to put him above the others and over the whole kingdom. Daniel had an incredibly successful future ahead of him, with all the power, prestige, wealth, and freedom he could have wished for. This, however, made him a target for jealousy and envy. So the other presidents and satraps persuaded Darius to pass a law that stated that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. In other words, Daniel's prayer life was so well known and established as a part of his character that his enemies knew this was one place they could count on him not whimpering, and they were completely correct. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. 11. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. 12. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? Verse 10 simply takes your breath away. This is where we realize Daniel's prayer was daring, defiant, and disciplined. When Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he returned to his home, where he kept the window in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem, and he knelt 3 times a day to pray and give thanks to his God as he had done previously. The practice of praying facing the temple in Jerusalem is mentioned only in 1 Kings 8:22-53 and Psalm 5:7 in the Old Testament. Psalm 5:7. But as for me, I will come into your house in the multitude of your mercy. In fear of you, I will worship toward your holy temple. The practice of praying facing the temple in Jerusalem is only mentioned in the Old Testament in 1 Kings 8:22-53 and Psalm 5:7. Psalm 55:17 mentions prayer at evening, morning and noon, but it is unclear whether this was a common practice. 1 Chronicles 23:30 only mentions morning and evening temple prayers, standing and kneeling in prayer are both mentioned in the Old Testament. Daniel's prayer practice most likely reflects a custom that arose among the Judean exiles in the Eastern diaspora. Take note of 6 daring things. 1. He did not act in ignorance. Rather, he acted with full knowledge of the law and its implications. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to pray. Don't forget, Daniel is right on the brink of being promoted to the main ruler over Persia. Consider the justifications that must have rushed through his mind. My influence would be so great if I held that position. I can do more for God while I'm alive than when I'm dead. It'll only be 30 days before I can pray again. Legalism is unquestionably a greater sin than expediency, and so on. However, he rejected all of the rationalizations. He was aware of the law. He was aware of the penalty. He then went to pray. 2. He did not go to the woods to pray. Instead, he went home. He could have continued to pray to his God without putting himself in danger if he had simply gone underground for 30 days. There is no law that requires you to pray in your home, where your adversaries will be looking for you. 3. He did not enter his house's secret inner chamber. He went to the room with the most windows, open windows, the one on the 2nd story of the house, the most visible, the one facing Jerusalem rather than the palace in Babylon. Do you see why I refer to this act of prayer as defiant? Daniel is not simply praying in defiance of the king's order. He's making a public announcement. Today, we would say he is protesting. He is engaging in public civil disobedience. And he's doing it in a way that no biblical commandment requires. 4. He did not pray once in the early morning when no one was looking, but 3 times a day, every day. He would make certain that he was not overlooked in his refusal to obey the law. 5. When Daniel prayed, he did not use ambiguous and vague words that a clever defense attorney could argue were addressed to Darius, because they did not specify which god was addressed. He gave thanks before his God, it says. Darius, not so much, and not the Medes or Persians' gods, but the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 6. He did not change the way he prayed or do anything else to give in to the pressure of Darius's law. He prayed as he had done previously, it says at the end of the verse. There were numerous ways to pray that would not have been detected and would have satisfied his God's law. But Daniel prayed boldly, defiantly, and 3 times a day as he always did. So, what are we to make of it all? I'd like to offer 4 final applications for our prayer lives today. 1. Prayer is a valid form of public testimony, and we should use it as God leads us. Jesus said, "And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Matthew 6, 5-6. Is this an indictment of Daniel's public prayer? No, I don't believe so. Not our willingness to suffer for prayer, but our love of praise for prayer was Jesus' warning. He wasn't saying it's wrong to be seen praying. He was saying that wanting to be seen in order to be praised for your piety is wrong. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. Blessed are you when men persecute you for righteousness' sake, but woe to you when you use your righteousness to seek their praise. 6:2-4. In Daniel's context, and here we need great wisdom to know our own context, the call of God on his life was, "Let your light so shine that men may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. For Daniel, prayer had become a public statement about the glory of God over the glory of Darius, and it was a legitimate testimony. And so it is for us if our hearts are right. 2. Daniel's prayer was disciplined and regular. When the time came for a protest, Daniel didn't have to make any changes. He was already praying 3 times a day in a specific location. There was structure, routine, and discipline. Could it be that discipline, rather than being a dull substitute for spontaneity and power, is the garden in which it grows? You work patiently in the garden, and God miraculously grows a plant with supernatural power. This, I believe, is correct. This week, I encourage you to take a step back and plan some discipline into your prayer life. Follow Daniel's example